you turn grim to grins. So we're looking forward to hearing from Dr. Brand Miller. Over to you.
I had a lump in my throat that was as big as a cantaloupe, it seemed like. Grapefruit. There you go. There you go from what we heard earlier. Right. Yeah, but the lump in my throat was because I had something weird and bad happen in my life. But I found myself in a setting that was filled with joy and laughter and celebration. It was Christmas time. It was Christmas time. It was just a couple of days after Christmas. And my wife and I, Debbie, who's my wife here, and my two grandchildren, whose ages 5 and 2, had a date set up to give my daughter and her husband a little break at Christmas time and kind of have a Christmas time date with Grandma and Grandpa. And so we did that, and I'd been looking forward to this for weeks and weeks and weeks. But I also had something else going in my mind and my life for weeks and weeks and weeks leading up to that Christmas time. But we got together and we did the Christmas thing with the grandchildren. And you got to know something about my two granddaughters. They are now 7 and 5. At that time, they were 5 and 2. They are fiery, dynamic, loud redheads. All right? They are loud and they squeal and they yell and they cry loud, they laugh loud, they do everything loud. You ever been around people who are just loud? Well, that's my granddaughters, and it's me sometimes too. But anyhow, we got together and we did the Christmas time thing, which was bowling and arcade, that kind of stuff. And we landed at McDonald's, my granddaughter's favorite place. Now, I like McDonald's too. I'm mostly a McDonald's breakfast guy. But they love, what do the kids like at McDonald's? What do they like? Happy Meals. And in my life, I have 3 adult children and these 2 grandchildren. I don't know how many Happy Meals I've consumed or been a part of, but it's been 8,612 probably, at least. A lot of Happy Meals, right? And so we had it was chicken nuggets. That's their go-to thing for at McDonald's. And so they were digging into the Happy Meals. And it was a lot of fun. And of course, it's Christmas time. That means Christmas music is playing. That means there's Christmas decorations everywhere. And we're having a big time at McDonald's. But they had no idea that I was really a grumpy old man in disguise because I had a kind of a cloud over me. But these 2 granddaughters of mine, they helped me at the Happy Meal time at McDonald's to have a little switcheroo here. Because something I said or did, I'm not sure what it was, set those girls off. You see, especially then, I had just got done, it was Christmas time, and I did a little playing Santa Claus during Christmas time, and my beard was a little longer than it is now. And they started pulling my beard and calling me Santa Claus, things like that. And something set them off into a full-on giggle fit. Now, you ever been around a couple of little girls, 5 and 2, or any little girls, any girls really for that matter, when the giggle fit gets started, it is infectious, it is wild. And they started giggling and they started playing with, Debbie and me, but me particularly, and something I said or did set them off, and they were giggling and laughing and singing songs and having a great time. And you know what happened? Their giggle fit started me to giggling and laughing, and Debbie to start giggling and laughing. And everybody else in the whole place eventually started giggling and laughing, at least paying attention to us because we were causing a commotion. And it was something there. And what those little girls did that day is they saved my day that day because I had this cloud, this lump in my throat. That doesn't go together, does it? A cloud and a lump in the throat. But I had this cloud hanging over me and a lump in my throat because I was feeling like a grumpy old man because of something bad that had happened to me. They saved the day, particularly by 2 things. Something that was said, a voice that I heard, and something that was seen, a vision that I saw, that those 2 little girls gave me that day. Stick around towards the end. I'm going to share with you exactly the voice and the vision. My name is Dr. Brad Miller. I'm so glad to be here, a part of the AATH conference here, and to share this time with you. I've got to know several of you, and it's just been a real joy and a pleasure, and it's been a lot of laughs, a lot of fun. And I look forward to more of that happening. I retired 3 years ago as a local church pastor after 43 years. And then during the time, I also earned I'm a doctor, not a medical doctor. I have a doctor of ministry, but it's in transformational leadership, and that comes into play here in just a minute. I'm also a podcaster, and I was in radio before that. So I've been podcasting for about 13 years and was named the top 50 over 50 podcaster recently. So the more interesting things, the more important things for me is I'm a husband of this beautiful lady here, Debbie, my wife, who's my videographer, and she's very nervous about being a videographer today. So give her some love. Will you do that? Yeah. But anyhow, a dad to 3 adult children who are just fantastic. And I'm really blessed that 2 of my 3 children live within a short distance of us, and the other one lives in Oregon across the country from us. We get to go see them once in a while. But I'm also a grandpa of those 2 little girls I mentioned there, and they are kind of the delight of my life as well. I'm also a comedy fan, and been a part of that my whole life. I like lots of different types of comedy, but Steve Martin's my go-to guy. I saw Steve Martin when I was in college in the 70s. Anybody remember King Tut? Does that mean anything to you? Or even The Jerk and some things like that. But yeah, and I even took his online course here recently. Good stuff if you want to dig into deep into the comedy. But most recently is the Murders in the Building show. Debbie and I really enjoyed that show, and we are going to be going to his live show with Martin Short here later on this summer. So if you want to know what I'm all about, and everything we're going to talk about here today is going to be available to you on the QR code, and I'm going to have slides. The ebook is available, a free audio course. This video itself is going to be made available to you, and I'm going to be publishing a book about what we're talking about here later on this year. You'll get a free copy of that book as well. So that's, and you can get in the website and the email, and that's what we're all about here. But this is what I want to kind of say to you today, that really what we're all about here is what happened to me was cancer kind of blew my balloon. It kind of popped my world. Things erupted. Have any of you ever had something happen in your life that just blew you away, even suddenly? Whether it was cancer or car wreck, a divorce, depression, losing a job, any number of things can blow us away, right? And oftentimes they're sudden. Right now we've got stuff going on in the world that's really problematic. COVID a few years ago shook everybody up. But what I'm going to talk to you about here is how in my world in that moment, my world was kind of blown away by cancer. You see, what those 2 little girls didn't know, and why would they know, in the McDonald's there, is that just 2 days prior to getting together with them, the day after Christmas, I got a phone call from my doc and confirming what I already suspected, that I had prostate cancer. And ding, 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 I was the big winner when it comes to this. I had an aggressive form of prostate cancer, which the doc said, hey, if you don't do something about this, it's going to kill you in 2 or 3 years. Now, I had known a little bit about prostate cancer in terms of, it's one of those diseases that people say, oh, it's one of those things that you will die with and not from. That's a bunch of bull, okay? If you go going through it, that's the kind of thing. I knew this at that moment. I had to laugh to keep from crying, in the sense of that I'd already studied enough about it because I've been going through the test for months to know what this was really all about. And then I had a couple of options here, really only 3 options, really, if you're diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer. That is, you can do the wait and see approach, watchful waiting they sometimes call it, which to me sounded like a time bomb in my pants, but not in a good way, if you know what I'm following. there's also this thing called radiation, and they do these things called seeds, which they implant in your gonads and they radiate it. And somehow it gave me the image. Anybody see the movie Little Shop of Horrors? And is it, what's the plant's name on that? No, Seymour's the guy. Audrey 2. Somehow I had my mind, seeds, gonads, radiation, Audrey 2. I don't know how it was going to come out that way, but it was a weird image I had in my mind, just like something's going to grow that doesn't need to be growing in the right kind of way. It just was bad news. Radiation. Or surgery, which is, of course, to cut out a walnut-sized mass from your prostate and cut it out kind of. It goes deep into your twig and berries area, and I didn't like that thought either. But the worst thing to even think about was when I started thinking and looking more into the side effects of what this was all about. You know, the death thing was one thing, but what was going to be worse was incontinence and impotence. I wasn't looking forward to those things. Of course, incontinence means that you are wet, very wet, all the time, and not in a good way. And impotence, of course, means you're very not wet, very not wet. Again, not in a good way, okay? And so I wasn't looking forward to all this kind of stuff going on. But I'm a little bit of a problem solver type of person. You know, that whole thing about kind of a process. I'm a process guy here. We're going to talk about a few numbers and things like that here today, but I'm mainly a process. How do we get from here to there? That's this transformational leadership type of thing. How do we transform our lives? So I started talking to some people. I talked to one friend of mine who had gone through prostate cancer some years before in his mid-50s, and he said, well, it was not that good, and now I can't have sex anymore. And I thought, I don't want what you got. But that's what he told me. Then I talked to another friend of mine who had just retired about the same time I did as the CEO of one of the biggest healthcare systems in the state of Indiana where I'm at. This is the one where in every little town there's a healthcare system connected to the major university there. And he had the personal friend of mine. We had been in ministry together. And I got together with him. I said, you know, I've been, throughout my ministry, we're in the periphery of this thing called therapeutic humor and understanding how laughter and things like that are helpful. Tell me about what's going on in the medical world. I wanted him to tell me. I thought maybe we could talk about this, where maybe I could do some workshops on this, so we could learn about it and see what we can, you know, put my heads together. It may be helpful to me, and I can be helpful to you. And I also wanted to learn from him because he's the CEO of a major health organization. And you know what happened? He blew me off. A personal friend of mine, who he ghosted me actually. We had coffee one day, then we exchanged some emails, and I didn't hear from him again when we got to the point of, well, let's do something about this. And I thought, okay, there's an issue here that's a little deeper than what I'm getting right now. And so that's when I talk to you who are humor therapists here in terms of what I think is one of the problems that we deal with, and we're going to at least approach it here today. I believe that there is a problem in the therapeutic humor profession, and that has to do with the sense of being simply not taken seriously by the powers that be in whatever organization or that we may be a part of. Does this ring true with any of you? I'm just curious, okay? Just simply not being taken seriously, or where the legitimacy of humor therapy, where humor or joke telling is kind of seen as a kind of a momentary it's a momentary just thing to do, gives instant relief rather than being a part of a therapeutic process for healing. So what I want us to do today is to look at this problem in the context of what I went through with prostate cancer and what I believe that many people go through with cancer, and kind of the bigger picture of cancer as being something that will eat you alive, whether it is a physical cancer or mental health or depression, anything else. Humor therapy not taken seriously. So today, in this context, we're going to talk about the 3 C goals of what we're going to be talking about today, and how we can motivate men who are prostate cancer victims or persons impacted by that, and the men and women who love them to do what I call these 3 C's, which are check, cope, and cause. Check is the physical part of this. This has to do with, you're getting checked out by the doctor, doing the things you need to do with your physical health. I'm so glad for my doctor who helped me to flag this. A month after I retired, I got flagged for this. But that's the healing part of what we're going to be talking about today. The cope is what a lot of what we deal with here at this conference is dealing with depression, denial, loneliness, all that type of things. Would you agree with me that we basically have our own pandemic of loneliness and depression going on in the world right now? But this is exacerbated by things like cancer or when bad things happen to us. So that's the first 2 things we're going to deal with, the check and the cope. And the cause has to do with seeing a bigger picture, how we can then have a healing process and have a greater purpose. That is the hope thing. That is kind of the larger picture of this. And I like to call it live by a creed of a greater purpose here. So let's just take these one at a time. On the check area, many men just don't want to deal with prostrate health. I didn't want to deal with prostrate health. I just didn't want to. It's just like, oh, please, I don't want to deal with this. But no guy really does. But the fact is, 70%, and these are what I got from prostatecancer.net or .com. 70% of men have prostate problems, especially as you get older. Over 50, it exacerbates even more. And 20% of men have prostate cancer. It advances as you get older. So the fact is, all of us guys in this room are probably going to be impacted as I look around the room, and all of us women in this room and everybody in this room is going to be impacted directly or indirectly by either having it yourself or somebody you know or love is going to be impacted. I'm not going to make a big deal about this, but how many in your life have been impacted in one form or another by prostate health problems? Okay? It just happens, okay? And it's not talked about a lot. And that's what I want to help us to bring it to light a little bit here today. In light of what we can talk about it, let's have some fun with it. Early detection does matter because just like any other health issue, the earlier you detect it, the more you can do about it. It is a slow advancing disease, but if it gets ahead of you, you don't want that. And the DRE is not the only option. DRE stands for, anybody know? Digital rectal exam. Ding, 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 a big winner. You get a bracelet and a balloon right there. All right. Let's. There you go. The DRE is not, the digital means finger. All right. It's not like when I talked to a group of podcasters a few weeks ago, they thought it was some new app on your phone, No, it's the finger. But, and it's not the only option, but it is certainly one that's still used. Here's a guy kind of bracing himself there, and I couldn't get the actual graphic of this, didn't really want to, but you get the idea. But this guy was just kind of like clenching and going, I can't believe this, but just, it's a thing about kind of a denial thing, Did you hear about I heard about a guy who was taking a hike up in a mountainous area, and he was hiking along this ridge, and he lost his footing, and he slipped, and he started to fall down the ridge here and over the cliff, and he reaches out and grabs it. He finally grabs like a root hanging out the side of the mountain. He grabs it, and he's kind of dangling there, and he's in trouble. He's in real trouble, but he's been on this hike basically on his own. He yells up above him, because that's where he came from. Hey, is anybody up there? Anybody up there? Anybody up there who can help me? Nothing. No voices, nothing. He did not see anybody on the trail. He yelled, anybody up there? Please, I need some help. I'll do anything. Help me. And this voice, this big booming voice came down. This is the Lord your God. If you believe in me, I will help you. And the man says, I believe in you. I believe in you. What do you want me to do? And the voice said, "Let go." And the man said, "Is there anybody else up there?" Sometimes we want almost anything but that daggone DRE. In fact, I heard that the DRE, the digital rectal exam, if it's not the most unpopular test that any guy can take, it's right up there. It really is. So that's the part about getting checked out. The COPE thing has to do with your emotional and your mental cost of prostate cancer. And the facts are, as we've already mentioned here, that depression and isolation and loneliness are all a part of this. I believe also with the particular area of prostate cancer, there's also a sense of kind of isolation or lack of support. Medically, I think we do pretty good. I know the medical system I was worked with, they gave me lots of options, and there's lots of opportunities there, but they, on the other side of it, kind of the mental health and the emotional health and the relational support needs a little work. And I think that's kind of generally true in the whole medical world in coordination of the total health picture. It's better in some areas than others, but in this particular case of prostate cancer, it can lead to other areas of problems, including marital problems and sexual dysfunction, because you're talking about the functions of your sexuality. And it does impact those areas, and so I believe that comes into play here. So what we're talking about here, basically for me, this felt like I had a crash. I had a bicycle crash. So several years ago, I did, actually riding my bike, have a bad crash, got bloodied and bent up a little bit, landed in the hospital. It wasn't a lot of fun. And, I was just trucking along, and Debbie, my wife, was on the bicycle ahead of me, and she made it about another mile down the road before she realized I was not there anymore. But yeah, but it was okay. But I landed in the hospital. But when you get this diagnosis of prostate cancer, you feel like, oh, how did this happen? How did I get broken? If I had that slow motion moment just before I hit the pavement, like this is trouble. But I had that going on. But it also made me feel old when I got this. I don't like that feeling of feeling old and kind of wearing out a little bit. Heard about a guy who was having that feeling, who was feeling like getting old. In fact, he was dying of cancer. He was in his bedroom at home, kind of waiting for the end to come. He was very weak. Then up through the house came this aroma that he remembered. It was the aroma of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. His wife was downstairs baking chocolate chip cookies. He's thinking, oh, how wonderful this is. She's baking chocolate chip cookies for me. And so he says, I got to go. I got to go to the kitchen and see what's going on. And so he climbed out of bed, and he's just racked with pain and weak. He kind of crawls down to the steps, and he makes his way down the steps into the kitchen. And indeed, there's the chocolate chip cookies up on the counter there. He brings himself up just to the edge of the counter. He's reaching out towards the cookies, and whack, his wife slaps him with a spatula. She says, those are for the funeral. Oh, man. So, cope, cause is the next C we're going to talk about here. Cause means to have a sense of a bigger purpose in your life, that you need to get kind of beyond the moment. You got to deal with the shock of the moment, and you got to get on with it. And so that's having life with a new purpose, a future focus in this case, and having a bigger vision. And you connect with things that are about fulfillment over finality. When you first get this diagnosis, it's kind of like, oh man, the world is over with. It's over with. Cancer, the big C, will get you. And to learn how to function with fun, whether you have one day left on this earth or 100 years left, function with fun. In my case, it kind of meant, to use the metaphor, the bicycle thing, it meant getting back on the bike, even if you're in your 60s like me and you need training wheels. The first time I got back on the bicycle, after having my wreck, I was a little wobbly. I was a little scared of traffic, a little scared of everything to get back on the bike, but I was determined to do it, but you got to have a moment to get back on the bike. You see what I'm saying? Or get back on the horse, whatever metaphor you want to use. So I developed, though, in this whole process, something I called my eye problem. Now, this is a vision problem, but not like how your actual optical vision. The eye problem had to do with how I function. I couldn't see a big vision when the focus was inward towards me. I had this eye problem. And I break it down into 4 I words. The first one is insanity. When you first get the word that you have cancer or something else bad like that, it rocks your world. It makes you dizzy. It makes you unbalanced. Anyone else have this kind of experience when something bad happens to you? You just feel like you almost can't stand up? That's what I'm talking about here. It's the shock. It's the lack of balance. It is a sense of denial that goes on. It is this deflation that happens. And this kind of the deflating thing is kind of like, just kind of like, ugh, away it goes. Well, that is what is going on here, the insanity part. And the key word I use to connect with this is confusion. How you were confused and you are left in a state that is unstable. In my case, I really felt like I was kind of like Cleopatra because I was the queen of denial. A state of insanity where you make dumb decisions and you do dumb stuff, and that can hurt you in the long run. I heard about a guy who was an out-of-work actor, but he loved the whole world of show business, but he couldn't get a job, and he finally got a job at the circus. Oh, I'm finally in show business. But his job at the circus was to clean out the elephant stalls. So he found himself knee-deep in elephant poop all the time, and that's what he had to do. But he came up with an affliction. He had to go to the doctor, and he went to the doctor, and he said, Doctor, I'm having this issue here. I have this terrible rash all up my arm, and it's really bugging me. It's really terrible. And the doc says, well, what's going on? He says, well, and the out-of-work actor says, well, I got this job at the circus in show business, of course. But one of my jobs my main job is to deal with the elephant cages. But sometimes these elephants get constipated, and my job is to put suppositories in the elephants. So I find myself elbow deep into the butts of these elephants. And I think that's how I got this rash. And the doc says, well, hey, I don't know. Have you ever thought about a different line of work? And the guy says, what? And give up show business? We make insane, stupid decisions sometimes, do we not? So the next one is incontinence. The next I is incontinence. We know what incontinence means and we deal with it. I use it, I term it in this, it's a loss of control. The loss of control means that we are uncomfortable. We are wet. It is a loss of free movement. It is a sense of isolation. If you have incontinence, indeed, we talked earlier, you're wet all the time and you don't feel good. We don't really like naturally in everyday life to be wet all the time, do we? We get out of the shower, we dry off. We go swimming, we dry off. We just don't like that feeling. So if you're wet, it is not going to be the best thing in the world. So it impacts everything else in your life, For instance, you start to think about, if you go to a trip anywhere, you start to plot out where the bathroom's at. There's a gas station in this corner, there's a Walmart over here, the library over here. Come on, honey, we're going to drive for 45 minutes, but we got to stop. Make sure we stop because you got to make that plan. You have geometry, you have traffic, you have all kinds of stuff going on that come into play. In my case, I also got really mad at this guy. This guy, when it comes to incontinence, really pissed me off. He really did. This represents a real guy who named Laird. I found out his name even. This is a representation of him, whose picture is on the package of Depends, which is in my closet right now. A year or so ago, Jimmy Kimmel Show had a feature of the male models who were the models to be on the packages of Depends. And this one guy named Laird, I said, I recognize that guy on TV. He's in my closet right now. It turns out the guy is 25. He's 25 years old. He's a former pro football player. You know, kind of like me. He's got ripped abs and a T-shirt, but he's wearing his Depends outside of him. It looks weird and stupid. And I thought, this is not right. You know, if they're going to have a model for Depends, it should be somebody like me, a pot belly and gray hair, and that kind of stuff. So I've been kind of mad at Laird for a long time. But that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. Incontinence is the lack of control. Okay? Impotence. Here's the biggie. We're going to get into this one here for just a minute. Impotence. The I of impotence is the loss of power. Okay? What does the word potent mean? Potent means power, right? So if you're impotent, loss or lack of power. And for a man, and for anybody really, but for a man particularly, this is an emasculating experience. It is damn depressing, let me tell you. You feel useless. You feel like, well, maybe I wasn't going to have any more children in my 60s, but, you know, it'd be nice to know that I could, you know, that kind of stuff. It's sexually frustrating to say the least. It is literally an invasion of your privates. It is literally like a kick in the nuts. And every guy in the world knows what that feeling is like. And every person has probably been around someone who's had that happen to them. And it's no fun. It will incapacitate you if you get, you know, a shot in the family jewels. It will knock you out. It'll take your breath away. And it's no fun, and because it is, you no longer have this sense, you know, you have a loss of power here. And people deal with it in all kinds of different ways. I told you I'm a retired pastor. And one of the things that we did in the church during the time when we did prayer time, just before prayer, we had something we called joys and concerns. Does this ring true with anybody here and some of your church people here? And joys and concerns was just a time when people would get up and stand up before the prayer time and usually would say, you know, Pastor, would you pray for my Aunt Martha's bunions, or, you know, whatever it would be, or Pastor, you know, my in-laws are coming in from Texas, so please pray for us because I don't like them very much, whatever it was, you know, that kind of stuff. And many times, certain people would go on and on and on, but my job is to try to corral that. Joys and concerns, kind of part of church life in a lot of churches. This one time, Mark and Jill were back in church after they'd been gone on vacation for a while. And I heard some rumors that they had some troubles in their vacation. But they were in church, and Jill stood up, Pastor, I have to share with you a joy and a concern that we have. A joy that we have is that Mark is back with us. On our vacation, we were at Mackinac Island up in where they have these bicycles everywhere, and we were bicycling, and Mark had this terrible accident on his bicycle. He fell off his bicycle, and he broke his scrotum. Oh, and he broke it in 3 places. And they had to put him back together there was a lot of blood. There was 38 stitches. There was staples. There was wires. It was not good, Pastor. And so she goes on and on about how he broke his sternum, or he broke his scrotum. And Mark she finally sat down, and Mark stood up, and everybody in the place went completely quiet. I love my wife, and I thank you for sharing her concern. But the word that she was looking for was sternum. If you are insane, had this insane moment, and where you have kind of, lost your mind for a minute, and if you're incontinent where you've lost control, and if you are impotent where you've lost power, you tend to get mad about it. At least I did. These are some unhappy things to happen to you. They're not good. And you kind of get mad at the world because, daggone it, this is not fair. Why me? I don't care who you are. Some people say stuff like, well, I never had the why me thing. Yeah, I bet you did. I did. Why did this happen to me? I mean, it happens to others. And when you have this why me thing going on, or are mad at the world, you think the world's unfair to you particularly, or me particularly, you kind of do these things. You get mean to other people. I was not the most pleasant husband in the world, according to my wife, at least. I never am, but no, I most of the time I am. But I can lead to marital problems, or acting out, or be mean to others. I was mean to my dog. I was just not a happy guy. I was kind of the grumpy old man kind of a thing. The mad at the world. Insolence is a thing, and it can lead to problems in other areas of life if you don't deal with it. And what we're talking about here today is how you deal with it, how you cope with it. So it's kind of like this guy here. I know a lot of us have got to know Jim Bob Williams, and he's another prostate cancer warrior like I am, and we talk a lot. And he talks about how he is basically prostate cancer poster boy. And so he and I are that, which is mainly you just stand in your front yard and you yell at people to get off my lawn, get out of here. So Jim also talks about how the only real project the poster boys for prostate cancer have is to have a 10K run for prostate cancer, but it doesn't work so well because you have to put a porta potty every 15 feet or so. But this leads to the eye problem. My eye problem leads to these areas of being self-centered, hopeless, and humorless. We got to deal with that. So I became the person I didn't want to be with. I didn't like me very much when I was this eye problem person. And so it led me to be selfish, to kind of think about, do the, anybody else do the WebMD thing and all the other things you can do online where you start to search out all the kind of stuff. How does this impact me? Okay? That's the selfish thing that happens here. It can also be hopeless. Hopeless is where you think about what was instead of what can be. I'm going to be dead, so I'm never going to have time with my wife. I'm not going to be able to enjoy my grandchildren. I'm not going to be able to do Christmas or any of those things. You kind of descend into hopelessness, which is a pervasive problem in our world right now. It happened to me. And the third thing is humorless. I became the guy who, I was kind of known as the dad joke guy in my family, but it didn't work out so well. I went on an all almond diet, but that was just nuts. That was just. I used to be addicted to soap, but I'm clean now. Don't worry about it. It's okay. What do you call a nose without a body? Nobody knows. But I got a million of them. I'm sorry. I just had to get a few in there. But that's the kind of guy I was. I would send my adult kids, I called it DJOT, DJOTD, Dad Joke of the Day on my text. And they really got tired of that because I'd send them these kind of things. But humorless. But I didn't enjoy jokes anymore. I just was in a morose state. And that's not what I wanted to be. And so I had this image in my mind, though. Remember those two little girls I talked about in the McDonald's? Those two little girls, for some reason, this image, this vision was in my mind of them kind of watching me having this battle between kind of the grumpy old man and the fun grandpa, and kind of being concerned about me, about them caring about me. And it reminded me of the inner struggle that a lot of people go through in their lives, kind of the good and evil type of thing, and how transitions can happen. I had a lady in one of my churches named Phyllis, a wonderful woman, but she was known for being an extremely severe person, meaning that she would, be very straight-laced, not anyone to be messed with, and that kind of thing. But Phyllis got cancer and ended up having to have a liver transplant. And I went to visit her in the hospital. And when I went to visit her in the hospital, after the transplant, she grabbed me by my coat and kind of drew me right face to face with her, totally out of character with her, right face to face, and she told me with intensity and passion how she'd been visited by angels during the night and how that changed everything for her, how she had a healing that took place. And here's what the point of the story for you today is this. From that moment on, Phyllis, who lived quite a while longer, was a different person. She was a delightful person, a joy to be with, and she knew that she had joy in her life. The image I have here, I wanted to share with you, is this image that between kind of the good and evil that goes on. The choice for me was, I'm going to be the grumpy old man, the GOM, or the fun grandpa, the FGP. What was it going to be? FGP. And so that was the decision. You got ahead of me. I don't know who you got ahead of me. But it was the decision I had to make. Okay? And so this is a tipping point or a turning point. I think most people have this type of thing going on. The tipping point is where are you going to go into that death scroll, go down the drain type of thing. And you have probably known people like this. I know I have. People who gave up. You know anybody who just kind of gave up? Something bad happened and that was it? It does happen. Or the turning point where you turn things around to go to a different state of life. For me, I got back into my faith and my biblical background. I started studying the scriptures again because I've been kind of out of that for a while. You know, pastor, retired, cancer, it just kind of got me in a funk that way as well. But I got the scriptures, I found this scripture. Proverbs 17:22. A cheerful heart is good medicine. And that spoke to me, but this is what the Bible says. Good medicine, and it is actually what do you use medicine for? You use it to help you to heal. And it says here, a cheerful heart. But who is it for? Who is the patient here? The second part of that scripture says this, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. That's who it's for. The dry bone people, the people with crushed spirits. I had a crushed spirit. People around me had crushed spirits. And they couldn't, the dried up bones mean you're not living your life to the fullest. You're not having a full, energized life. That's who it's for. Do you think maybe there's a few people in our world right now who are the crushed spirit people? You think so? And the dry bones people? They are out there. And I was one of them. So what was I going to do about it in my life? So for me, it was about assessing my resources. And this is what I like to teach people. You got to see, okay, what have you got going on right now? Okay? So this is going to be different for everybody, but for me, it meant, okay, I had 43 years of ministry experience. That included dealing with people with cancer and other things in life. I had my doctoral degree, which was about transformational leadership, which is all about taking individuals and groups from a bad place, a non-functioning place, to a functional place where you're optimizing yourself to be effective for the greater good. And I had my wife and my family who were supportive with me. Even when I was a pain in the butt, they were still supportive of me, which is great. And I did love humor. I did love what that was all about. It was kind of a part of who I am. And podcasting, I had a background in that. I've been podcasting since 2012, published over 1,000 episodes of several different podcasts, teaching and doing things of that nature, what we're doing here today. I loved all that kind of stuff. So I put all that together, and I put together this thing I call the AATH Pact, which is the process that I wanted to share with you for a few minutes here that made all the difference in the world to me. It's the path to healing with hope and humor. Let's break it down. The A is for action. That is to get out of your funk and move. You got to get physical. This is the physical aspect of this. And for me, it meant that you not only get back on the bike, but you ride the bike. You get after it and you develop a plan and you ride the bike or whatever it is, you get going. And I set a goal for myself to ride a century ride, a 100-mile ride, and that meant you got to train for that. And you got to keep going and keep your body moving there. And some of the aspects of this, the action is a response to the insanity. How do you regain your balance if you're riding a bicycle? Do you regain your balance by standing still or staying? No, you got to ride it, right? That's how you keep your balance on a bicycle. And this is the physical part of things. So you do have to move. These are some of the things you got to do. You get your medical and all that part together, whatever that means. You got to move. You got to exercise. You engage with others. That means physical encounters. You know, online and Zoom is great. I do that all the time. But isn't it nice to be together with other people in an event like this, for instance, where you're here face to face? You got to do things like eat right. Function means you just take care of your bodily functions and everything else in your life. You get your meals, all that kind of stuff. You become a physically engaged person. That's the action. The C, the word acts, is to connect. And I believe this is on two levels. There is a connection with your higher power, your spiritual life, We mentioned that a minute ago about the biblical aspect that I was involved with. I could do a whole course on that alone. That's one thing. I call that the vertical, God or God to us or us to God or whatever your spiritual higher power is. But the other part of it is with people. This is the emotional connection here, okay? Maybe it's getting out. This guy's having a party. You get out with people. We have a party, we sing and we dance like we did last night here at the event, other things like that. And know that the connection part is knowing that God or the higher power is for you and that other people are there to love you, but give them a chance. Give them a chance to connect in your life, and that's our responsibility, and we can teach people that too. Some of the people I've connected to, Professor Frank Chadamo, if laughter is the best medicine, why don't we use it as medicine? There he is. Yeah. So he does some really cool things at LaughMD, which have to do with applying what we're learning here to the actual medical field. Joy First, Kate McGlynn, KDB. I've learned a lot from her. What an amazing thing. Go into Walmarts and other places around the country and go in there cold and offer joy to people. And her word is joy first. I love that. And then we got Jim Bob Williams. Part of his deal is making the workplace a better thing. So 3 areas of life there: medical field, workplace, out in the public arena. These are all people that I've met through AATH and I've interviewed them on my podcast. I've been a part of their thing too. My point is you get out and you make these connections to others. So connection, to take control of your life in the spiritual relational area, you've got to make a connection. And that's our responsibility, and we can teach people how to do that. There's many levels of it. Prayer, spend time with your spouse, get together with friends, groups, family, your church or faith community, counseling, online coaching. Agency means you have responsibility for this. Online communities, AATH is one of the places that you can do that. You're doing it right now, right? Connected. T is to think. This is the cognitive part of what we're talking about here. To think strategically. What is your process of what we're talking about here? How do you make this actually work in the day-to-day, your day-to-day habits and things in your life? How do you think it through? Thinking is a response to the impotence. It's reclaiming your power. This is the cognitive thing about overcoming uselessness, having some discipline in your life, have some fun doing it while you're doing it, make a plan, follow it, follow through, make adjustments, set some ambitious goals and benchmarks. For me, several years ago, I lost some weight, and of course, this is the picture of how I looked now and then. What do you think? Sure. Pretty good? You like that? Now, the idea is I did lose about 100 pounds several years ago, but it's a disciplined process. It's an ongoing thing, whatever it is. In my life, I think you take power back and you deal with the impotence in this way by doing whatever it takes, for whatever it is for you. Writing a book, for me, podcasting, other things in your life. When you have prostate cancer surgery, it takes away a lot of things in your life, and you've got to learn how to regain your power and your choices that you have. Let's just talk about impotency for a second, about what it's really all about here. Impotency, and when they have surgery, which I had to take out your prostate gland, it means you can't have sex anymore. Now, call me crazy, but I didn't like that. When I retired 3 years ago, part of things I really was, wanted to do is spend some time with my wife because I think she's kind of cute, and I wanted that part of our life to continue. And I thought it'd even be, more time when retirement and things like that. But this kind of blew my world apart in that way. And one of the things you realize that is you are no longer going to be able to function sexually the way you used to. Because by definition, they take out your prostate, you can't have an erection. That's not going to work. You have to take extraordinary measures in order for that to happen. And one of those measures that you can still do it, but it's a whole different world. The whole thing about spontaneity and romance takes a whole different world when you got to plan, you got to think it through. There are options. One of them is an injection. This is an injection that they have a medication that you inject get directly into your penis. Your penis is a pincushion, which is always a good image in my mind. And so it works, but boy, let me tell you, if you were to reevaluate your life, the first time you get ready to do that is something else. You got the needle, and you're kind of, okay, you're going to jab on the junk here, and you think it through, and it is intimidating. But, and you think, you do have different levels though. You have different, for different occasions, I guess, different levels. You have like 20 millimeters for birthday, 40 millimeters for Valentine's Day. You can do different things. Sorry. But it is, the first time you do that, your life kind of flashes before your eyes, and then you have to think it through, believe me. Then, of course, there is the option of the inflatable pump and balloon that they can put into you, which is, that's a good one too. I like that one too, because it's all about where they surgically implant a balloon into your penis, and you have a pump in your area, your scrotum area there, and it's kind of, remember the old Hans and Franz thing in Saturday Night Live? I'm here to pump you up. It's real. It's real there, and that's how that works. It's kind of like foreplay at a hardware store in a sense. It's kind of mechanical. It's kind of weird that way. It's like a balloon animal in your pants, but you do have the choice between a poodle and a unicorn, so that's good. But it is really a weird thing to think about your family jewels being jumbled up that way. My point here is the motivation and everything else, you got to think it through. And it involves deeper communication with your spouse or your partner than you may have ever had before. And all the kind of stuff. It's a thinking process here. And it has to be addressed, I believe. In my case, and also the thinking process also meant that you have to deal with other things in your life that you can do. In my case, I got busy and did a new podcast called Cancer and Comedy, which is all about healing with hope and humor. And that takes a lot of work to do that type of thing. You got to think it through, you got to follow through, and you got to work at it. And I did end up, I was named one of the 50 over 50 winners here recently of a podcast for that. So it does pay off, but you got to work at it. Now, the S is to serve. The S is the word to serve. Serve others with love. If you hate people, then you're not going to do well with this one. The deal is to have a purpose in your life. This is the response to insolence, okay? Having a purpose in life. Something for the greater good. A vision for the future. How can my experience help others to cope? And start something new, a podcast, something else in your life. In my case, it was not only these type of things, but I also put on a comedy show in my community to raise money for cancer. I got more involved with cancer and things like that than I ever had before. I'd had this track in ministry my whole life, and now I got very aware about the needs of cancer. We did an actual clean comedy cancer benefit, we called it. We had a full house at the venue we had at my church. We raised a substantial amount of money for Stand Up to Cancer. We had Rick Roberts, a comedian, come in, a nationally known comedian, who also is a prostate cancer warrior himself, so a part of his comedy set was about prostate cancer. So we made connections with the comedy community and the cancer community and other things of that nature in our area. And that's what I'm talking about here. Now, the pact. Let me get into this. All this is cool, that's a process, but if you don't follow through, it's not going to work so well. The pact means that you make a covenant, a commitment to follow through with this. It's kind of like the marriage covenant in a way. When you get married, you make a commitment, a covenant, to be with one another. I heard about a couple that had been married for 30 years. They were getting a little tired of each other. They both had just turned 60, and they just kind of getting through life. They went to a place, an antique store, and they found this old lamp there, and they, well, what the heck, we could buy this lamp. So they rubbed the lamp, poof, a genie comes out of the lamp, and the genie says, I will give each of you one wish. One wish. And the lady says, oh, wow, that's great. I wish for a trip around the world. Indeed. Poof, 2 tickets around the world. And the gentleman, the man said, the genie said, your turn, fella. And he said, oh, yeah. What am I going to wish for? I wish that my wife was 30 years younger than me. And poof, The man was 90 years old. The pact means a power of a promise kept, okay? Promise means you write it down and you do things of this nature. You value your life, you make a commitment. I teach a process called the 40-day way to to your promised life. You create a credo as a way to set your intention for healing with hope and humor. This is my credo that I wrote shortly after my cancer. I will not let cancer define me. I will leverage cancer to refine my life to the better in my relationships and drive me forward in my remaining days to fulfill my mission of sharing a message of healing, hope, and humor. And I wrote that down and I gave it to all of you in the bracelets that you have here. So please take those and put those on your table. You should have a bracelet right there. So put those on. Because it boils down to those three words: healing, hope, and humor. That's what it is for me. That's what I want to encourage you to do. Now, let me talk to you about this here for a minute. To me, the whole metaphor kind of boils down to this situation here. A couple of days, I was in the hospital 2 or 3 days for my surgery, came home, and what prize did I bring home from the hospital but a catheter tube and a urine bag? Yay, for 10 days. 10 days I had that. I was not happy about that. But it meant you got to learn to navigate that kind of stuff too, a catheter and urine bag and all that good stuff. And I went out in the hall just to move around. The first time I got out of bed to go out in the hallway, our dog, Red, met me in the hallway. Now, Red was a beautiful golden retriever, but she was 17 years old. That's old for any dog. And one of the many problems Red had in her last couple of years is that she was incontinent when she got excited. So she saw me coming down the hall, and guess what? She got excited, and there's dog poop everywhere. We got that going on. She gets excited. She comes towards me, and she wants to jump up on me, which she hadn't done for months anyhow. But of course, in that process, she starts to jump on. I go, wait a minute. And she jumps, and she gets tangled up in my catheter hose. Then I'm mad at her. I said, Dad, stop. So Dad starts to go back to her. And so I'm having a kind of an interesting kind of a walk like this, kind of a ginger walk, and she's walking down the hall. And, hey, you never seen a guy after surgery move that fast. I'll say that much. Move that fast because this is a situation where literally the dog was walking the man by the catheter instead of the other way around. Now, it just, let me tell you, it gets your attention, and what do? You do have to move. And you got to move kind of quick, and you got to adjust, even if there's poop around on the floor, dog poop or whatever, and everything going on. You got to deal with it. And so that's what I want to encourage you to do, to deal with this situation, to cope with hope and humor. Now, in my case, let's reevaluate. The goals for the day were to check and to cope with the cause. That's a picture of me literally in the hospital. And to check your health, to cope with your emotions, to get a cause bigger than yourself. For me, it ended up with healing, with hope and humor. So that's what I did. And then to go back to our problem, the legitimacy of humor therapy, let's talk about maybe that the humor therapy is not only a process where you give a joke to give instant relief, but maybe something like the AATH Pact can be a process or a prescription to offer healing with hope and humor. And that's part of my gift to you as humor therapists, is a process that you might be able to use. And that's where I can talk to you more about that individual if you want to. Now, remember I left you at the McDonald's with my granddaughters? Remember that? I left you there. We had the Happy Meals going on, and I told you my granddaughters were loud, redheaded, big voice girls. And my older granddaughter, who's 7 now but 5 at the time, Hadlin, she, in the process of the laughing and giggling, she grabs me by the face, and right in my face she goes, "You're my fun grandpa!" And everybody in the place heard it. So that's the voice that I heard, and guess what? I had an instantaneously mindset shift. Instant. I was going to be that fun grandpa, not the grumpy old man that she was. And then in that process, I also had a vision. The vision was of my then, you got to be a little woo-woo with me here for a second. I had a kind of a time travel thing. Literally, I saw my younger granddaughter at age 22 in a cap and gown getting ready to graduate, and my older granddaughter, age 25, wedding dress, getting ready to get married. And I was a part of the process then in their life, where in that process, I was going to be the fun grandpa with them, dancing, laughing, giggling, having a good time, and not be a tag along and not be the grumpy old man you got to deal with, the old man. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be that guy. I want to be the fun grandpa, even 20 years from now when I'm in my 80s and they're going through their important times in life. And it was a good vision to have. And that's my vision I have of them. That's them right there. And that's my delight of my life. And here's my wish and my hope for you, my friends. I know I'm about out of time, but let me just finish this thought. And that is simply that you can have this in your own life and you can give it to your clients. That you can give them a system and a way to take overcome the bad things in life. That you can give them control over the incontinence. You can give them power over the impotence. And you can give them joy in their life in such a way that you can cut the cables there of your life. And when you do that, you can have a life that is fulfilling in such a way that you're no longer going to be in a situation with a dog dragging you along or cancer or anything else dragging you along. You're going to have freedom in your life, and it is going to indeed set you free. And that's what I want. It's all about healing and hope and humor, and I thank you for being patient with me.
If I could add my 3 C's, thank you very much. You were clear, you were candid. It's really hard to talk about difficult topics, and you showed your commitment to share. So I hope you continue to be an FGP, a fun grandfather. So Dr. Brad Miller, thank you very much. And I'm happy.
Thank you so much. Glad to, I know we're out of time here, but I'm glad to talk to anybody in any other setting. Yeah.
Was the score indicative of what you were about to go through?
I'm sorry, sir.
Was your PSA score indicative about what was coming up?
Yes, it was.
Is way up there?
Well, not until actually it was not elevated until towards the actual diagnosis. It was elevated a little bit, but not in the danger zone, yeah.
Thanks to ladies for coming to this group.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I have a book with hope, healing, and humor.
Oh, well.
On my story in recovering from a brain tumor.